penultimate question. Um, so when I was in high school, I guess I should start off. I grew up in Texas, in a small town on the Gulf Coast, and I knew from a very young age that I wanted to move away and see more of the world, do more things. And so I had a plan to go to college someplace different. I had no way to afford it, and so I was looking for opportunities. And the military happened to be one of those. There's a funny story of how I ended up in the Navy, actually. I'd originally gone to the recruiter's office to see the Air Force, and when my mom and I showed up there, the recruiter was out to lunch, but it just so happened that the Navy office was right next door. And I walked in and started talking to the recruiter there, realized that it sounded fascinating. I was actually really interested, and right there on the spot, I was like, this is what I want to do. And so signed up for that one, and just was really excited about the opportunity to travel and go do something different.
Cool. Okay, when did you join? Like right after high school?
Let's see, so I did ROTC.
What is that?
No idea what that is. Okay, it stands for Reserve Officer Training Program, or Training Corps. Reserve Officer Training Corps is what the acronym is. It essentially is a program where you go to school, so college, at the same time as you're doing your military training. So I did that for 4 years here at the University of Minnesota, and then it would have been 2008 that I was commissioned, so that's when I actually went on active duty.
Okay. How long did training take? So like, training, was it like, did you have to do training after college, or after is it ROTC? Yeah. After that, did you have to do some more training?
So it was 4 years during school. Each summer I did what they call on-the-job training. So I went and spent a month or two on a ship in the summer during each of those years. And then afterwards, all the training that I got was on-the-job training, just straight.
Yeah.
I graduated a couple days later. They sent me a couple pieces of paper telling me where I was going to go, and went out there, walked on board the ship, and they're like, here's your job, go.
Where did you go? Like, where did you visit when you were?
Oh my goodness. So in the 4 years I was active, I think I went to 26 different countries where we actually pulled into port. I spent probably about 2.5 years of that time at sea. So they tell you join the Navy, see the world, but like 71% of the Earth's surface is covered by water.
Yeah.
So I saw a lot of water that entire time. I've sailed the entire globe all the way around with the exception of San Diego to Miami through the Panama Canal. So at some point in my life, I will be doing a trip. I don't know when, but I need to complete that circle.
Cool. Okay. Occupation. So like, while you were on board, like, what did you have to do? I don't know how to.
That's a really complicated question for so many different reasons. The way a ship works, it's always running, so it's always on. You have an engineering plant that's going full time. You have people that are on watch up in the pilot house full time. You have people that are manning combat systems and communications. You have food services, others that help take care of things like laundry and dishes, and the small day-to-day things that you usually don't think about because it's a floating city in that sense. So most people on board have a primary job. So my job on the last ship that I was on, I was the navigator. So I was responsible for getting us from point A to point B, making all of those plans and doing it on time, using the right amount of fuel, those things. When I wasn't doing my primary job, I was on what we just refer to as watch. So everybody on the ship had a watch rotation. You either did it in the engineering plant, you did it in the pilot house. And so my job when I was on watch was running the ship from the bridge.
Cool. Okay. Oh yeah, if you were given free time, like, hangout time, what would you do?
Free time, oh my goodness. I can probably count on one hand the amount of free time in hours that I had over the course of a deployment. Most of the time sleep, honestly. It sounds silly, but it was work, watch, sleep. We did a rotation that we called 5 and dives. So we were on watch for 5 hours, and then you had 10 hours off, and then you were on watch for 5 hours again. So during a 24-hour period, you had 2 watches, and then in between that was the time where you had to do your real job, your regular job, go to all the meetings for the day. I also like manage a department, so just making sure that my people were doing their jobs. And then you also, that's the time that you have to sleep, eat, work out, do
Yeah.
anything else that you need to personally.
Do they like have like specific like checkups or whatever, like physically, like just, yeah?
So you have to take a physical, what do we even call it? PFA, physical fitness assessment. I don't know, acronyms, so many of them. But it was twice a year, and you had to run a mile and a half, do push-ups and do sit-ups. You had to meet certain standards
Yeah.
for it. But
Did you find that challenging?
I'm a runner. I've always
yeah.
been a runner, so
That's nice.
to me, it was one of those things that I didn't even have to prep for.
Yeah.
If I had been in a different service or in a different, area, there would have been much more challenging ones. But on a ship, you're moving all the time. You're climbing ladders up and down, and it's always rocking. So you have to like work your balance.
Yeah.
I never felt like I was out of shape.
Yeah. What did your like ship carry, like if anything? Yeah.
The first one, nothing. Really, let's see. Well, you know what, that's not right. So the first one, I guess we carried 2 helicopters. So that was if we had cargo, that would have been the primary thing. But I was on a frigate, so it's a small, I call it the fast pointy one. So we could go pretty fast. We had 2 helicopters on board, and they were what we used for our primary missions when we were out there. On my second ship, we were slow. We had a bunch of diesel engines, so we were really good at running at a slow, steady speed all the way across the ocean. And we carried Marines and all of their gear, so we could fit 3 of the landing craft unit in the back, or we could fit a whole bunch of tanks, or for part of the time we carried 14 amphibious vehicles, so the ones that drive out the back and drop into the water. And that ship was basically a giant pickup truck. So it literally looked like one had a big tall front where all the people lived, the engines and everything underneath, and then the back was flat so we could land aircraft. And it had a little gate in the back, and we would drop it just like a pickup truck. Then we would flood it with 10 feet of water and send all the craft out the back of it.
Sorry, I'm trying to think of like creative questions as
That's
I
okay.
go. Did you like make like lifelong friends while you were in the Navy? Or any that?
That's a tough one too. I have 2 really good friends. So I'd say from that 4 years worth of time, I have a lot of people in my network that I think are very valuable contacts that we have good relationships with. But friendship-wise, I would say I only have 2 that are like legitimately really good friends.
Yeah.
Like people who invite you to, their weddings, even though you live halfway across the country. But the way job rotations and everything work, people join and leave at such different times that you can be there, get to know somebody for 3 months, and then they're gone, and vice versa. So sometimes that gets a little bit complicated.
Did you know like when you wanted to end your service, or like?
I didn't know right away. I started on the second ship, like while we were deployed, we got back, and I started thinking about what I wanted to do for that next option. And I would have had a shore tour coming up, which would mean that I would have been stationed on a base somewhere. I wouldn't have deployed on a ship during that time. But I didn't really like any of the options that I saw. And when I was talking to my boss and my boss's boss, I just didn't, my long-term career goals and things that I was interested in doing in the future didn't necessarily match up with that. And so it's when I started thinking critically about, is this the best option for me to pursue those? Is this a lifestyle that I want to try and maintain for 20 years? Am I going to be happy doing it? And ultimately I decided that it wouldn't be a good long-term decision for me, so that's why I left.
Okay. When you did leave, how like soon, or like how did you like transition, like?
Oh goodness.
Yes.
When I left, let's see, the first thing I did is I went to my family's cabin in Tahoe for about 3.5 months and just lived out there. It was the middle of winter. I went skiing and snowboarding just about every day. I needed to be away from everything, have a chance to just think and kind of readjust myself to being around people. People tell me now that I appear very like sweet and nice and friendly and easy to talk to and everything, and I think that's very true. But in my role on board the ship, the personality that I had to have or exhibit in order to affect my job in the proper way was very different from how I normally come out. So the first thing I did was just kind of take time to recenter myself and get back to who I was, and kind of drop some of those skills and mannerisms and things that I needed to be effective in that situation.